Welcome everybody to Z Suite. If you've got a bland pitch, get ready to rewrite it. That's what we're going to work on today. I'm Mark Orttung, CEO at Projectworks and host of the Z Suite podcast. I've got with me Jacob, my colleague, and he will be keeping me and Megan honest on time and asking us a lot of hard questions along the way. And I'm really excited to have Megan joining us. She is co-founder and head of go-to-market at CoreX. So welcome. Maybe a quick question for you to open things up, Megan. What's your best one-line pitch and what's the most bland that you've got as well?
The best one line too, a new one. I think one of the ones that you had put together before, Mark, was a really, really strong one. So one of a company that Mark and I had worked on together had a thought process in sort of custom app development around life's too short for crappy software. And I think that was a sort of really true narrative around kind of where we were in the market, what we were trying to get to, and some of those pieces. So I thought that was a really, really strong, it connected to the right audience who understood that we're transformation agents on that side. So I think that was stronger. We're focused, the company I'm working on now is focused sort of on like business transformation. And so it's really sort of driving business transformation with a technology backbone. And I think that also talks to clarity. We understand what we're doing. It's differentiated and we're going there. The worst ones, so to me, those are the good pitches where it's people understand and can close. We were talking earlier, can close their eyes and understand who you are, where are you coming from. It passes that like blink test, right? And what would I get from working with you? The bad ones, I think. So we were talking about the let them, let there be change, let them transform, let them eat cake, those sides. I would also say that a lot of the pitches I'm seeing these days that probably the team on the call I was thinking through is really this sort of like AI universe and how do we pull and imbue AI into our messaging? And a lot of times it ends up coming like, AI transformation for today, which and I've seen that so many different times.
Mm.
But to me, the problem with that is that almost everyone is saying that right now. So there's no differentiation, there's no narrative, there's no sort of, it doesn't I can't close my eyes and understand what are we transforming, where are we going, who are we transforming for? And so when we talk about bland, I think if you could change out your company name with just about anybody else of any of your competitors and nobody would know the difference, that's not going to get you where you want to go with pitch.
Mm. Love it.
Hmm.
One of the things I love the most about Life's Too Short for Crappy Software is it's just personal. It's immediately personal. Like you can jump into those moments in your daily life or in your work where crappy software frustrates the hell out of you. Um,
Yeah, people always had like a visceral reaction, like my
mm,
thermostat or my stove, or like
yep,
there's all these things in the world that have software in them, and it's really bad.
yep.
And yeah,
And
really
everyone's
frustrating.
experienced it too, right? That there is a universal relationship to having crappy software that has a distinct experience that everyone doesn't want.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to switch from this into some rapid fire questions just to kind of open things up and hear a little bit about Mark and Megan's approaches to pitches and what they're thinking about for 2026. And to our live audience, drop any of your own questions in the chat. Just like always, there'll be plenty of opportunities to come on mic and share those live through today's session. So, Megan and Mark, this time next year, why will Bland be an even riskier move than it already is today?
Do you want to go first, Megan?
Sure. Well, and I think that it's they're two sort of multiple, I suppose, sort of colluding experiences that are happening. All of us see, we are at an inflection point, an intersection of so much change as, as business leaders, as consultants, as all of these different pieces. Our audience, our customers, whether it's, on the B2B side, are trying to navigate and transform and change in unprecedented sort of technology innovation cycles. Like, eh, I feel like since 2020 or even just before that, we have consistently, on a messaging standpoint, said like, welcome to the next normal, welcome to the next normal, welcome to the next. And that is accelerating and accelerating. So I think as we sort of navigate finding customers, creating go-to-market strategy, that's happening to our customers and prospects. At the same time, this age of AI is really creating some kind of like, a homogenization of
Mm.
what messaging is out there. I'm not sure that if anybody opens their email, it's probably pretty rare today to read an email from anybody, from a marketer, from an executive, from anybody that's in your network that maybe didn't start from Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever. Like, people are using that to launch and start almost anything. Very few people, I think, are writing from scratch anymore, a little bit. And so as that happens, that will create bland anyway. And so we used to say, right, that best practices ultimately become, stop being best because everybody's doing them. And I think in a consulting firm, especially if you're starting to sort of, define and change and evolve yourself, you have to do what people aren't doing. You have to go and suggest and offer something, unless you're going to be the cheapest out there, or that, and which isn't a bad play, but you do have to have something distinct about yourself. Otherwise, there's no one that's going to sign the check, right? And so the more homogenized our messaging gets, the more the more people's attention spans are just going to skim over it, I think.
Let's expand on that a little bit, and maybe one for you, Mark. What will clients expect to see in 12 months' time in a winning proposal? What will be the difference?
I think, well, first, I think clients really want to see a deep understanding that you have a deep understanding of their business. And
Yeah.
that has to shine through more than anything else. And then maybe number two is you have to be differentiated. So based on this deep understanding you've got, your solution, how is it really better and different than everybody else in the pile or in the inbox that they're looking at? Yeah, the noise will go up. That's the other crazy thing. I think we're saying a year from now, right? Today, there's an insane level of noise, as Megan was saying, like, and everything kind of looks the same and feels the same. I think that gets worse in the next 12 months. I don't think it gets better. I think it gets worse. So yeah, so understanding and differentiation.
What would be
I
the
agree.
difference? I mean, this is probably a similar way, well, a similar type of question, but what's the difference between firms that'll stand out and those that'll get lost in the noise, Mark?
The difference between what'll stand out and what won't. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really down to crisp differentiation. I think that's at the core of everything that you have to have to stand out. It's just, yeah, and it's so basic, but easy to lose as we're all taking advantage of AI helping us do things.
Yeah. And I think to that standout, I think there is sort of, as things get more homogenized, even sort of like, our kids or that side, they start to think about like, they're looking more for like the authentic classic. We're collecting vinyl. So I think what's interesting is there's been this movement, to sort of this mass email and all of that. But as people get more and more disconnected by technology or by our phones or whatever else, there's also this move to get, more and more sort of like specific or bespoke or intimate. And I think we hear a lot in partner ecosystems or that side where, we're in a big one. There are 2,000 or 3,000 different partners out there. What does it take to be an elite partner? How do you connect to a seller or a customer or those pieces? And a lot of that is where are you focused? So in that sort of concentric circles, what do you specifically do? And then what don't you do? Because sometimes there's a credibility to saying what you don't do. But I also think in that, you know what I mean? You have to then tell an expensive enough story to support your teams too. So it has to be small enough to be specific, but big enough to be able to hit your revenue goals and all of those pieces. And I think that's sometimes an interesting needle to thread. But I think that's where, to me, it's also companies that know what they do, but also where they're not and where they should maybe partner or not compete. Because it's just, with cycle times and with so much noise, I do think you have to be really credible where you are too, because people will see through it.
It feels like the unique opportunity, I think, for small and mid-sized firms, right? Where we were kind of just laughing at the start about the big consulting pitches, which are trying to be so many things to so many different people and types of businesses that it just gets lost the essence of it gets lost in
Yeah.
it. But when you're, as you say, Meghan, going deeper, being something really specific and unique for a certain type of customer, you can differentiate through that. And small and mid-sized firms do a pretty damn good job of it, generally speaking. One on AI, which you touched on, Meghan. Everyone's using it in some shape or form these days. How will AI have changed the way firms pitch for work?
You or me?
I've got thoughts on this one.
Yeah. You can start and then I can tag it if you want.
Okay, sure. So at Projectworks, we're actually building a proposal tool, so helping firms use AI to pitch. And I think it's really important that what we do is like, in my experience, when we would build a proposal, there's a lot of like low value add kind of grunt work. You have to find the latest version of the About Us and the right case studies but like once you get all that noise done, then you get to the hard part, which is like, what is our story for this particular problem that this particular client has, and how do we really solve the problem in a way that stands out? So what I'm hoping AI brings, and specifically the tool we're building, is all that other stuff gets really quick and really easy, and we give you a starting point for the story, but that's where you can apply your energy, is what makes us stand out for this particular client and this particular challenge they brought us. And then hopefully the rest of it's quick, easy, and you're no longer doing a lot of like sort of admin type work, like chasing down the latest version of each piece of what you're putting together.
So what's the other side of that? What's the stuff that AI won't change in the pitch? Maybe this is the one for you, Meghan. What's the stuff in the pitching process that AI won't be able to take control of because it's uniquely human in some way?
Yeah, and I think that's where even Mark was getting to. I think that administrivia, right? Like what's our most like a lot of that pitch side of, an RFP or that side it tends to be pretty repetitive. Like what's the one that we won where we said, here's what we do in, specific industry or that side. I think where AI can't do is, so what's your unique data set? What's your unique IP or that side? So, I do think that there will probably be a move away from sort of the big, we're having a conversation, not for 9,000 hosts of reasons, mostly security and guardrails around, client, proprietary data and all of that. I think, there's less and less sort of using the public language model. So in consulting, it was always your differentiation really was sort of like your approach or your data set or your consulting team or those sides. So that I think becomes even more important. I do think AI does not, so early research, some of that stuff, like to me, even like using it for key trends. So looking up, if you're pitching even small mid-sized companies, if you're pitching a larger enterprise firm, they have earnings or they have that side. They'll have 2025, strategic initiatives, those things. I think using the language models to crawl those and really then take our understanding of what are their goals, what's their mission statement, and how do we then imbue our sort of like, how do we match our culture codes against the company we're buying? Like, how do we sort of think strategically about what really is different, what is connected, what's our unique IP, what are the 5 articles about this that only we could have written, and adding them into that statement. I think those are the big pieces. I'll also say that, and this may have come a little bit earlier, but I think sometimes in these things, I don't think AI is great at, I don't think AI is particularly good at voice or audience. It just doesn't understand context or the narrative. And I think we've been saying, gosh, since like 2013, right? That like your website, whatever you're writing, any, sort of pitch that you're doing, it isn't something I want to sell. It's something that someone on the other side of this camera or the other side of the screen is going to read. And it's what do they want to buy? And I think that's where AI, like that homogenous sort of, but it's very pitchy. I had a boss that said one time, when we were talking about this in the prep, right? That like, when you start to talk in marketing or sales speak or digital speak, you you stop talking like a human and you talk at people. So like the people that are like, you're looking for the love of your life, your wait is over. Like you would literally never say that to a human if you wanted to be a friend with them, if you wanted to take them out to dinner or that side. But I feel like a lot of AI stuff has that sort of like splash, crowd, pitch where it's like we're going to trick somebody into becoming a customer with us instead of, but I don't think like a pitch shouldn't be sort of like oh God, they're going to trip, fall, and like accidentally sign a check with us. Like this is we're building a working relationship because of what we do, because what we do and how we approach these pieces align with what you do and how you'd like someone to approach whatever your, engagement would be. And so that to me is, I think that's what an AI model can't do, is really make that sort of like human to human connection that is the end of the day in consulting, like it's people working with other people.
Mm,
That's
love it.
interesting too. A couple of these.
Thank you for the questions, folks. We'll pull up a couple of those. I want to dive into this next section because it feels like some of those questions would be particularly relevant based on your experience building launch. So, Mark, why don't you kind of set the scene for us on the journey that you and Meghan went through?
Yeah, so we both were in different companies and were acquired by the same company, which is where we met. And it was a pretty unique opportunity for both of us because they had acquired 5 companies and had 2 internal groups that did what those 5 companies roughly did. We were all pretty similar in our solutions. And so we were asked to create a new brand that took these 7 things and made them into one, which was fascinating on so many levels. But today we'll focus in on sort of messaging and like how do we get the position. So the brand that we came up with is called Launch by NTT Data. So Megan, we got to work on this together. First off, maybe what did we get wrong? Like what did we screw up as we were trying to get this thing going?
No, I think wrong is but I do think that, well, I think people talk about context, right? And so I think one of the things when we were getting into this is that the company itself, so the acquiring company wasn't necessarily known as sort of that like true strategic transformational consultancy. And so we had some uphill brand battle, I think, to do because we weren't seen as one of the bigs, and we had hired a whole bunch of sort of consultants out of that. But I think that we were hired by sort of a very large GSI but multinational conglomerate, and so like there were pieces of that I think we also had to, as we were defining and sitting down with all of the teams about, okay, what's different about what we do. um I think that was a piece of it is like also like, and what do we have to overcome to, because I think some of the early elements of the pitch and some of the first couple campaigns that went out were really sort of like, because we were mixing 7 or 8 different things together and we didn't have like the goal of the company in some ways was like
Mm.
to get higher margin business instead of like create true exceptional transformational stuff. And I think the early pieces of that we got too enamored in like this internal sort of, people call it like belly button gazing, or that side where it's like, well, what do we want to build? What do we want to do? And didn't have enough external testing and messaging around what do people want to buy differently in this market than is already readily available.
Can I pause you there very briefly? This feels very similar to Georgie's question. Georgie, if you want to come off mute and share it, it sounds like something to do with understanding the unique needs of the client, Meghan, what you're describing.
Yeah.
Go for it, Georgie, if you're able. Sorry, Mike, not working. No problem. I'll read it out. Georgie's question was, if the best pitches address the unique needs of the client, any tips on how to best gather that information?
I think Megan covered a little bit of it earlier, which is when she was talking about how like it used to be the bar was you've been to our website, you've kind of Googled around a little bit, you have like the basics, but now you really should have an LLM like summarize if there's an annual report, figure out what are their strategic goals for the year, what else have they said publicly. People love it when you go look at their most recent 5 LinkedIn posts and see what they're talking about there. All of this is pretty easy to pull together, I think, in an LLM world, and give you the summary that makes you a lot smarter, a lot quicker. So I think the bar for like just basic background has raised. So I'll
Yeah.
start there. I don't know, Megan, what you'd add to that.
Yeah, so I completely agree that, you know what I mean? I actually think a prompt that is like, imagine I'm pitching to the CEO or and then two or three other personas too, including the person you're actually like presenting to, about this strategic narrative. What, you know, based on their external postings, their social media crawl, like whatever that is, you know, what do you see as their biggest business challenges that I should make sure to address? So even something like as quickly as that does it. I would also say, Georgie, and this is one of those funny things that it's so simple, but not everybody does it is often the client will tell you, right? So if you say like, what are the six most important, like, what are the two or three most important things out of this
Mm.
meeting? I'm just making sure that we do, you know, the right amount of research. There's very, because they've already engaged with you, they're already talking to you, unless you're literally running people down in an elevator. Most people want to get the right business results done. And so it's a surprising, you know, those funny things where I don't think everybody asks what a client wants.
Mm.
Um, and usually they'll tell you. So I think that's one of them. I would also say, and not, but I've been using the same thing for about 13 or 14 years. Look up, there's still, so early days, I worked at a company called Mech Labs, marketing Sherpa, and we did sort of conversion rate optimization or the psychology of sort of why people say yes online. And they have a killer, it's like a 15-minute you know, webinar or something on just like value proposition differentiation. And
Mm.
so how do you define like, you know, exclusivity? So are we the only people that can do this thing? Clarity, are we clearly expressing what we, you know, what it is that we do? And then to me the last thing is there's a lot, the whole host of things that go into it, but to me that what I usually think about is like, have we created clarity, have we created exclusivity? And then the last part is, you know, is like, is there appeal? So do people want this? You know, if the funny thing about that, let there be change from Accenture, that, or to one of the big four, sorry, that came out was whoops. But like, but one of the funny things about that to me was that it happened in 2020. So it came out and it wasn't a bad, like that whole sort of like brand strategy, it wasn't a bad mock-up, except that it happened during this time that everybody was changing everything about their lives against their will. And so sometimes also you have to be willing to sort of pivot, like especially today, there's a new agentic model or, you know, some new tariffs or any of those things that are coming out. I think that intrinsically impacts your audience. And so having agility around what your messaging is to flex to that too.
Mm.
I think I'm way going off the how do you gather information, but to me, like some of that actually is it's information not just about what they want for this particular project, but also information about what their specific industry or their specific company is facing given the market conditions behind them. Because if
Mm.
you know that, you're 6 steps smarter than anybody that didn't do their research and also isn't looking at the company in context.
Just one thing I want to pull out of there that we used to use at Nexient. We would, you know, Megan said you should just ask, right? We would often do our first introductory call with the customer. First, we used to have our PowerPoint, and we'd like try to get all of our 50 slides in a half hour, and then we kind of realized like nobody wants that, and then we had this terrifying moment, like, okay, no slides, we're just going to talk to them, and then we eventually migrated to I forget what tool it was, but it was basically an outliner, like a note taker outliner. We'd put up a blank outline and we'd say, please tell us like what keeps you up at night. And people, it was amazing to me. Everybody would do it. And by the end of the call, we'd have this outline of all their like sort of worst things that are just bothering them and that they wish they could change. And it was sort of cathartic for them. Like you could tell they were like happy that somebody had asked and they could just like say it out loud and like get it off their chest a little bit. And then the deliverable of like, here's the 8 things you said and how we've organized them. People really were there, like, can you send me that? And it was wild, but like now we know what they're worried about. It was awesome. It took us a while to get comfortable enough doing that because it's a little scary. You don't know if they're going to say nope. You know, like at the beginning of the call when you ask, like, tell us what's keeping you up at night. They say no, you got to have like a plan B ready, but that never happened to us. So
Nothing, I sleep fine. Okay.
yeah,
Like, well.
yeah, probably not going to work out anyway if that's what they say. But yeah,
Valuable tangent, I think, to go
But
down that
I
way.
actually
Sorry, Megan, didn't mean to interrupt.
But I no, I 100% Jacob. I also think like even that though is like if you're not the thing that's going to solve their problem, you're never going to be the person or the company that's going to solve this unique problem. So actually knowing that too, I think because you know, as everybody knows, sales, go to market, you know,
Mhm.
revenue, all those things, it's a volume game too. It's understanding your audience, but also you know, spending your time in the most appropriate way. So knowing who's not your audience, I think is sometimes just as important as, you know, not going after everybody, not spending every sales cycle with the people that are never ever that sleep just fine and have no problem with
yeah,
just sort of going to a webinar to see what it is. Like, okay, great.
yeah.
I want to bring us back to the launch journey, and perhaps if you could just like summarize briefly, Megan, along those lines, what worked well in that process and what you do differently. I imagine bringing 7 odd firms together and knowing who your audience is and how you differentiate that is a pretty unique challenge. What did you learn through that?
Yeah. And I remember, you know, I think it was the evolution. I do think in sometimes getting your pitch right is also an evolution of your leadership team and
Mhm.
getting alignment on sort of what the vision is for that too. Because I think even that, having that planning session, so understanding what your clients want, but then um, I used to sail, and so what I will say is we did a big race, and what they'd have is there's a buoy, right? And so what you sometimes think is like, all right, how many boat lengths away is that buoy? And we had a coach who said, all right, everybody stop. Tell me in your head how far away that is. And literally 5 people who've all been doing this for a while had 5 different answers. And so I also think like in your pitch and what we had with launch
Mhm.
was this understanding where like we wanted higher margin business. We wanted to do transformational consulting. We wanted to have sort of you know, like we wanted to have a viable alternative for sort of that, like the BCGs and the McKinseys and all those things. But what that looked like to a series of senior executives that have been in this market and from 7 different companies that had grown up differently was very different. So we had a planning meeting that was really around like, okay, what are our differentiators? Like what truly does make us special? And I will tell you, like, it took a second, right? Like there were 1 or 2 funny calls where there was a little bit of crickets where you'd be like, okay, but do we hire differently? Do we, you know, when our last clients came to us, like, why did they come to us? And like the first 2 or 3 literally was like, well, because they didn't like, you know, they hated, you know, a different GSI. You're like, okay, well, that's not like, we're going to have to work on that because that's not why somebody, you know, that's not a compelling why for somebody to pick up a pen. But then we
Mhm.
got to, as we had some of these, like, what could we be? You know, given the market, we were talking about like, you know, how these pitches best address the needs of the client. Like, what do our clients need from a global scaled, you know, big four alternative? What could we be? So, okay, like we also have deep manufacturing. We also have deep, like connected devices. We do and already had sort of like an AI model even 4 or 5 years ago. So you start to pull the pieces together for launch of, okay, like what actually could we be? And the thought around the launch even was sort of like an acceleration around the curve, like, you know, there are a lot of companies that are storied in sort of their process and those pieces. So can you have a scaled global disruptor that is trying to pull together a string of pearls, sort of, you know, strategic acquisition vision that really brings not just sort of like a conglomerate of scale, but truly the best of the best of the best of each of these ecosystems and industries to see to deliver a more transformational result. I don't know if we ever got all the way there, but I think that was as that started to happen, you know, I do think you step back and you start to think like, would I buy this? And we started to get, I think, Mark, you know, it was 2 or 3 days. It
Yeah.
was actually cool. There was somebody like drawing behind us too, to get to there. But 2 or 3 days after that, we really did get to a like, okay, this is something if I were our target market, I might now start to buy.
Mhm.
And that's when I think we changed some of those things.
It's a valuable question to ask yourself through the process, right? It's often easier to see the learnings and the insight with retrospect, but when you're in the middle of the process, I think it's a good, honest question to just keep coming back to: would I buy this?
Right.
Yeah.
Position
Yeah.
your customers' shoes. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit just because I'm conscious of time into our live workshop mode, and I think it'd be an appropriate one to bring up your question, David, which we can get to now. Typically, we workshop a live audience members scenario, but this time we're going to do a little differently. We're going to workshop one of our own, and Meghan, you have a bland pitch that you've seen through the lines somewhere, which you're going to bring up. We'll talk it through, and to our live audience, my request for each of you is to put yourself in the shoes of the person receiving this email, and chat with us along the way about what's working, what's connecting, and what's not. So why don't you bring that up, Meghan, and perhaps in the process, while you do that, Mark, you could pick up on David's question because it was a valuable one. How do we adjust our pitch to get past the agent or be promoted by the agents?
Yeah, that's a fascinating one, actually. If you assume there's an agent reading all of your agent written pitches and you got to get that agent to let you past.
Whole another layer.
Yeah, I don't know if I know the answer to that one. I don't know, Meghan, do you have a take on how do you get past the agent filter into the human
Well,
inbox?
I will tell you, and I've gone down like crazy, crazy pieces of this sometimes where you're like, okay, but like now, depending on the agent, does the agent want us to be using AI or not? You know what I mean? And you're like, okay, I've gone around the bend. Like, should I include dashes or not? So I do think what I would say is it's two or three things. One of them is from a content strategy. So agents like think about it like the technical SEO pieces sometimes too, and that side. So the reasons why people your site will get ranked or some of those things, and you can use AI to search that stuff up too, but a high bounce rate or some of those things like a high bounce rate where people don't stay or there's only one thing on your website that talks about this particular insight or that side that has a tendency to it's called what's it called um authority ranking, so it lowers your authority rank. And so that is one of those things. So if you are going to pitch and you know that you have to push it through sort of like some sort of crawling agent, I would also say like have kind of branching content, have other pieces of information that the agent can publicly search for, because otherwise you won't be seen as a credible authority on whatever topic that you're trying to pitch on. So I think that is one of the pieces. But then again, I would say to almost anything, read what you say out loud or like those things and just make sure that it does actually make sense in the same way that like, you know, you can tell the kids that are cheating on, or you can tell the emails that are only written by AI. And now I think everybody can see that at this point. Like you absolutely know. Um, don't do that.
Speaking of, we've all now had a chance to have a quick skim of this email while it's
Yeah.
been on screen. So tell us, Meghan, a little bit about who the audience is and what is the outcome. I don't even know, to be honest, what it is this
Yeah.
is trying to achieve.
So what's interesting on this side is this was a message. So we come from a partner ecosystem, and this was obviously something that was written from AI. So, but we've done a little bit. I would also say one of the things that we're trying on that like pitch level or those sides in our company is you hire salespeople for a specific reason. You hire marketers or writers or that side for also a specific reason. They're usually different. They're usually like salespeople are relentless, but maybe they weren't writers. But there is a psychology to what and why makes an email good or bad. And so we've been doing actually like this live optimization on a biweekly just sort of sales training call where one of the things we do is like, all right, anybody bring your emails and we'll all sort of like update them together. But there is a learning process to that, right? So everybody starts to get and become better writers because of that. So that's that. This particular one, we are in a partner ecosystem. And so this was targeted at sort of the partner. So salesperson to salesperson, account exec to account exec. Hey, how are you? We're trying to get into a different we're in the ServiceNow ecosystem. So the ServiceNow territories it's like a matrix organization. So they're geo-aligned, but then they're also industry aligned. And so we were in this scenario reaching out to teams in the manufacturing org. to start to do some joint account mapping. But Jacob, to your point, one of the first things is if you read this, one of the issues about a bland pitch is I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. Other than, hey, maybe I'm supposed to read this link about a success story, but there's no next step and there's no action. And so that was one of the issues. I don't know. So you guys tell me how this works in the chat. Are we supposed to let other people kind of rip it apart too, or we're gonna
Let's
anybody
just
else see
dive
any
in.
problems with this?
Yeah, feel free to pull it apart, folks.
I always find it funny when I get the second or third or fourth email in a sequence and it refers to one of the earlier ones as if I had somehow seen that and remember it. Because the
Right.
odds are like very close to zero that I had no idea that you previously sent me 4 emails, and one like this one says, I recently sent you an email about. Whenever I see that, I almost laugh and just delete it. Like I'm like, okay, this is sequence email number 3.
Right. And I think so 100% to that. And also like even funnier sometimes are the ones that are like, I've emailed you 4 or 5 times and I haven't heard back. I don't know why. And you're like, well, first of all, like I didn't ask you to email me in the first place. So
Yeah. Maybe there's something you could take away from the fact that I have not replied to your first 5
so now you're mad at me? I don't know.
emails.
I think we just start, Megan. Let's just start
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
redoing this based on best
So I
practice.
will
And I
say,
think
so
all I'd ask is that though we're talking about an email here, obviously everything's a pitch, a coffee meetup, an email, an actual proposal itself. Talk us through the psychology and the little parts of the rewrite as you go.
yeah, so I think to me, one of the things so the first piece, and I sometimes cut things around, right? So the first piece is I've introduced this weird FUD, which is that they don't have time to talk to me already. Because I've said you're busy and I'm busy, so I'll get straight to the point. So I've introduced this friction of like, this is a waste of your time or not. And so I don't think we have to do that. I do think that, so the goal again was to get to a why. But I think something like, and I'm going to really, we did do some live optimization, so I will sort of like change this a little bit. But so I've already reached out to them. So I think it's like, I was thinking about the email I sent you last Tuesday and wanted to follow up with you. With a little, let's do like a little clarification or something like that. I will also say I always type long, so I'm going to type long a little bit now, then edit yourself down. But and wanted to follow up,
Always.
you know, because, and then give a why. And also one dumb thing, but because, so there's a great book called Influenced by Robert Cialdini about trigger words and that side. So people like the word because there's a reason for it. So I use because, I use get, exclusive or specialized. So there are trigger words that will make your pitch just the human brain, sort of our lizard brain, click up. Oh, there's a because. I wanted to follow up with you because like I think we have 5 mutual accounts where we could significantly, and this is for them, so advance your Q4 numbers. So this is, to me, we're giving them, so I'm referencing why I emailed them. I'm not telling them that it's not, so, but instead of saying this isn't worth your time, um, instead of saying this isn't worth your time, I'm giving them a reason why I'm reaching out because I think that that is that sort of what's in it for them. So then I said, if you did, Mark, to your point, right? If you didn't see my last note, I'm from X company and we specialize. I'm just going to do this fast because I know that we're hitting time in business.
It's immediately
Focus.
getting more specific as well. Like Q4, there's a time frame and there's 5 mutual
Exactly.
accounts and there's a specialization. Like it's getting to
Yeah.
the core of a specific
I
customer.
really like that you called out the 5 mutual accounts because it makes me think, how does she know what my accounts are? Does she really have 5 mutual accounts? Like, now I kind of want to like investigate that. Like, because if we really do have 5 mutual accounts and you're talking to them too, I want to understand what's happening, right? Like it's very
Yeah,
much
and
in
it's what do you know that I don't
what
know? Yeah, it's and there's a specificity to that. So I'm not just like I'm not asking you for 700 things. I'm asking you like this is an ask where if I blink my eyes, I understand.
Mm.
We specialize in this. And then I'd say in particular, instead of just saying I recently sent you an email about this manufacturing story, I'd say like I know you're focused in manufacturing. Sorry. Um, and we have just completed a project with, and then I would name the company where we drove AI transformation. And I would say something like, so again, to this, I know I'm sending this. I know that these reps are spiffed on AI right now. So the reason I would do that is also they get more money if they sell AI. So like, so it's also understanding the partner ecosystem.
Mm.
Um, leverage, by increasing vendor onboarding.
That's the type of stuff like we talked about early on about
Yeah,
gathering information on a unique type
right,
of client or customer.
Mm.
right.
That's the stuff like what truly motivates them deep down.
You
Again,
know,
it's the stuff that applies irrespective of whether you're writing an email or drafting a proposal or meeting someone for a drink in town. You've done your
yeah.
research.
So something like that might benefit from this approach. Here's another, they might have some use it or lose it end of year budget. So this, I would edit this down, but to me, this is a much more specific, much more credible pitch, which
Mm.
is, I'm reminding you, I just sent you a note. I will say like almost always shorter is better. So then edit this down as much as you humanly possibly can. But to me, it's the thought around I'm giving you something specific. I'm telling you when I followed up and why I'm following up again. I'm giving you specific, credible, and tangible timelines and customers and a result that they can imagine. And then I'm giving them,
Mm.
a small reason why I'm going to follow up next.
Awesome.
And so, and the difference, right, between feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and I'd love to connect and see if these clients might benefit from this approach. There's more power and authority. And I think to me, sometimes like, I think customers like to see you, have some
Mm.
confidence. I don't know that like, again, in the same way that I always think about like, as you're building out companies and relationships, you really are building a relationship. You're building a business relationship with people. And I don't think that any humans like to have relationships with people who don't think that you ought to be in a relationship with them. Do you know what I mean? I do think that
Mm.
there's a confidence of here's why we think we're great and here's why you should work with us because we've really hired these amazing people to work with us and solve hard problems.
Mm.
If you feel like it's an accident, then just human nature. All right, well, I mean, you don't even believe in yourself. So I do think that you do have to come in with a little bit of not bravado, not false bravado, but sort of confidence, knowing, and that's where that exercise around knowing who and what you are and what you
Mm.
bring to the table um, is really valuable.
Self-belief, right? And it's infectious. That builds trust and helps people to think, "Oh, maybe I'll actually believe it too." Um,
Yeah.
Conscious we have gone a little over time, so we'll pass to you there, Mark, to wrap things up.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. It was a great session, and so many things I'm taking away. One, just as you wrote that, some of the real concrete, specific, human-only sort of thoughts you put in there that are clearly
Mm.
not from a bot, I think will really help get through all the noise. So if you want to hear more from Megan, we are doing a conference, the Shift Conference, next week, Thursday, the 13th of November, US time. This will be the 14th of November in Australia and New Zealand. We'd love to have you there. We'll put the URL in the chat. And then I would love to see you guys in 2 weeks for my conversation with Armanino partner Ryan Prindeville. Um, And I love this. If you have not raised your prices this year, this would be a great session for you to attend. It's going to be a fun one. Till then, everyone, keep zigging and zagging. Thank you.